Hello, it's the 22nd of March 2021, which is the 120th anniversary of the first peal of Bristol Surprise Major. The method was composed by Edward Banks James in 1891, although it took 10 years for a peal of it to be rung. And it caught on very quickly and became one of the more popular surprise major methods. And that has just continued, so that in recent years, Bristol is usually the most rung surprise major method for peals. This chart is from pealbase.co.uk with the analysis for 2018, and it's pretty typical if you look backwards from that point, although actually in 2019, Yorkshire edged slightly ahead. So let's have a look at Bristol and its structure. The place bell order is 2357864. I'm quite familiar, and we'll say more about that later. The method has a very simple structure based on treble bob hunting in blocks of 4 around the work of the treble. And then while that's going on, you've got characteristic work of hunting to a point and then reverse hunting. And that happens on the back and the front because Bristol is a double method. This is what the line looks like. Here are the first 3 leads of the playing course from the tenor. You can see all the characteristic features, point blows. There are some fishtails where the reverse hunting joins onto the forward treble bob work. Here you've got the treble bob work near the treble. You've got places being made adjacent to the treble's path. You've got Stedman hole turns, which are point blows being made from the front or from the back. And these are all the ingredients of Bristol. I said that the method was constructed by E. Banks James. Unfortunately, there aren't systematic records of the composers of methods in the way that there are the composers of peals. And what I know about the history of the construction of Bristol came from the ringing world in 1922. Now, there are many fascinating things in the pages of the ringing world of 1922. And one thing that's striking is that a lot of big names who we now think of as legendary figures of the exercise, people like E. Banks James himself, his brother H. Law James, Gabriel Lindolf, William Pye, J.R. Trollope, John Carter is in there somewhere. They're all writing in week out, suggesting methods, discussing compositions, disagreeing with each other very often. It was a very active time in the development of ringing theory. And one of the issues they were grappling with was how to extend methods onto higher numbers of bells. And we'll see how that features in the story of Bristol in a little while. But in 1922, a band rang a method called Dublin Surprise Major. And this is a variation on Bristol. It's basically the same structure, and on the front it's exactly the same. But in the back work, we've got these 5th and 6th places going on, instead of hunting all the way to the points. And then 7th and 8th place bell just hang around with this 3 spike until they join back in with the work of Bristol. And E. Banks James wrote a letter to the ringing world saying that Dublin should really be rung as a double method. And there was no need to ring the Bristol work on the front. You could just do the same thing on the front as you do on the back. And he thought that would be much better. And this is the method that was later on rung and given the name Double Dublin, and is reasonably familiar because it appears in Norman Smith's 23 splice. And E. Banks James's letter went on to say that he had constructed many similar methods while he was working out Bristol back in 1891. And this was really interesting. So he explained that he'd started with the idea of treble bob hunting around the treble. And then he wanted to make the other bells fill in by hunting among themselves, so they would come back where they started. And the first thing he looked at was forward hunting. So here, forward hunting on the back 4 while the front work is going on. But he didn't like the adjacent 4th and 5th places in this method. So he didn't pursue it further, although it was eventually rung to a peal in 1962 and given the name Ditchling. The next thing Banks James tried was reverse hunting, and that gives a method called Peterborough, which was named in 1904. And then you can combine these ideas. So if you start with reverse hunting and then switch to forward hunting, you get a method which was run later in 1922 and named Lancashire. But if you start with forward hunting and then switch to reverse hunting, you get Bristol, and that's the one that Banks-James liked best of all. I want to say one more thing about the structure of Bristol Major, which is the order in which the treble passes the other bells. So it starts off by dodging with the second, of course, then it passes the fourth, and then we get the third. And after that comes the fifth, and then the seventh. And this 3-5-7, this is a sequence of bells in the reverse of coursing order. So the treble is passing the other bells in the reverse coursing order. And this is because the bells at the back have hunted to a point and then hunted away in the opposite direction. So they've all reversed themselves. What about the second and the fourth, which the treble passed in their natural coursing order? Well, they do a fishtail on the front, and you can see that the fourth leaves the front first, and so you've got the reversal of the coursing order going on there as well. And then what happens is that after all the bells have passed the treble, they reverse hunt to a point on the front, reverse themselves again. So by the time you get to the half lead, they're all forward hunting in the natural coursing order again. And the same thing's happening above the treble, so that when the bells get back to the lead end, they're all forward hunting in the natural coursing order. So this reversal and then reversal again of the coursing order, I think, is a key feature of the structure of Bristol. Now let's look at Bristol Royal. Bristol Royal was first rung to a peal in 1934 by the band at Beddington in Surrey. And I talked about this band in my video on London Royal. The band had rung the first peal of London No. 3 Surprise Royal in 1933. In 1934, they rang Bristol. In 1935, they rang Superlative No. 2 Surprise Royal. And in 1936, they rang a peal of 4 Splice. So they were really one of the pioneering 10-bell bands in the country at that time. And the method they rang as Bristol Royal, this is the method we know today as Bristol Royal. And here's the grid. We can see that when the treble's in the front 4 places, we've got the treble while hunting around it. We've got this block of back work constructed by forward hunting to a point and then reverse hunting. And it's still a double method, so everything happens upside down on the front. And then we've got this little feature here, which is some extra dodges inserted as a bit of padding. And these are actually wrong dodges. And this is something that appears as a new feature in Bristol Royal. It doesn't correspond to anything in Major. If we look at the line, here are just 3 place bells. We can see lots of characteristic Bristol features. We can see the points, we can see some fishtails, we can see the treble bob work, and then we've got these wrong dodges appearing in various places. Now, it turns out that Bristol Royal is not an extension of Bristol Major according to the current definitions about method extension. And indeed, the problem of how best to extend Bristol from Major to Royal was occupying people in the pages of the ringing world in 1922, as we'll see. But first, let's have a look at how we can quite easily construct Bristol Royal and see that it looks very reasonable from a ringer's point of view, regardless of the theory of method extension. And let's start by looking again at the order in which the treble passes the bells. And here's how it was in Bristol Major with that 3-5-7 sequence of reversed coursing order. So let's try to build up Bristol Royal. Here's the treble's path, and here we've got the third, dodging of the treble in 3-4. And then let's just look at what happens if we put this forward hunting, point reverse hunting above the treble. Here's the fifth, and it starts exactly like Bristol Major, and it passes the treble in 4-5. And then the seventh fills in, so we've got our 3-5-7 sequence as we would like. And then we need to have the ninth. And for the ninth to pass the treble in the right place, it has to delay a little bit. And it has to delay by 2 blows, which is exactly filled in by a dodge. So that's where this wrong dodge comes from. And then you've got the 10th. The 10th does a wrong dodge in parallel with the ninth, and then it arrives at the treble at exactly the right place. And we've got 3, 5, 7, 9, 10 as the sequence of reverse coursing order for the bells to pass the treble. And if you fill in the rest, you get Bristol Royal, and that seems very reasonable. Now, I said that as if putting in those wrong dodges was the only thing you could do to get the bells passing the treble in the right order. And that's not quite true. It seems clear that you can't pull these wrong dodges any further towards the lead end because the bells would be colliding with each other in various ways. But what you can do is delay them a little bit. And if you do that, you get a method called Liffey. And what happens is that the wrong dodge has been delayed so much here that it joins onto the fishtail, and you end up with this 3 spike at the back, which might seem rather un-Bristol-like. But still, Liffey Surprise Royal is not a bad method. And once you've introduced the wrong dodges like that, you can just keep doing that and extend Bristol to Maximus, and it was rung first in 1950 in Leicester. This is the grid of Bristol Maximus. You can see all points at the beginning, and then you've got wrong dodges, and then another set of wrong dodges, and then the treble gets into the back 4 places, and you're back to standard Bristol work. This is what the line looks like, first 3 place bells of Bristol Maximus. You can see wrong dodging appearing in various places. Usually you're doing 2 wrong dodges in sequence unless you're quite close to the treble. And then using the same idea, Bristol can be extended to any higher number of bells, and it's been rung on 14 and 16, first on handbells, and then on tower bells when towers with enough bells became available. But let's get back to Bristol Royal. And in the same letter in which he explained the construction of Bristol Major, Banks James spent a paragraph or so in a little dispute with Gabriel Lindoff about who had composed a few peals of rounds of triples. And then he suggested a new Surprise Royal method, which he said was the finest Surprise Royal method he had come across. And this method is now called Middlesex. Here is the grid and a representative place bell. And it is indeed a nice method. Soon after that, there was a letter by Arthur Craven, who said, "I'm surprised that Banks James is describing his new Royal method as the finest one he's ever seen, because what about Bristol Royal, which Banks James surely knows about?" And Arthur Craven gave the figures for a method which is indeed Bristol Royal. If you read his letter carefully, he doesn't seem to be claiming authorship of the method, but several subsequent correspondents in the rest of that year reacted as if he had claimed authorship. And the next letter was from George Baker. Now, George Baker was quite active in 1922 as well, and he had also rung in the first peal of Bristol Major, so evidently he was a good ringer. And George Baker said that he himself had come up with Bristol Royal in September of 1921, and had then discovered that J.R. Trollope had had it 9 or 10 years before that. There was also a note that Frederick Dench had written in saying that he had published Bristol Royal and Maximus in December 1915. Now, I haven't traced the association of Bristol Royal with Trollope or Baker, but I did find a letter from Dench in which he proposed this method, which is not quite Bristol. It's now called Nassington. And what he did was take the beginning of Bristol Major, including the 8th places, and put that into the backwork of the Royal method. And he made 9th and 10th place bells hang around doing this 3 spike in a rather double doubling fashion before they joined in with the rest of the bells. And this is what the line of Nassington looks like. It's not bad. You can do the same thing on 12 with the 3 spikes in 9, 10 and 11, 12. That method hasn't been named yet. Or you can take Bristol Royal and make a 12 bell method by just putting the 3 spikes in 11, 12. And if you do that, it's called Jakarta Surprise Maximus. So there are all sorts of possibilities. I don't know whether Banks-James knew about Bristol Royal or not, but he had previously proposed his own version of Bristol Royal, which is now called shipshape. And this is what it looks like. So he's got the characteristic Bristol structure pushed up to 7, 8, 9, 10, and then he's filled in the 5, 6 work with some free spikes. And this is what the line looks like. And if you look at 10th place bell here, it does 0.7ths twice. And if you think about what happens on the front when you reverse all that, second place bell ends up doing 4 points in 4th place, which you could certainly say is very Bristol-like. Now, the next step in the story is a letter by Albert York Bramble a couple of weeks later. Now, Albert York Bramble became well known much later when he founded the College of Campanology, which was an attempt to formalise and systematise the teaching of ringing. And it was very active from 1955 through to 1966, all over the country, and it pioneered residential ringing courses, and then somehow it folded up. But in 1922, Albert York Bramble was a young man with an interest in method structure. And he wrote in saying, well, Bristol Royal seems to have been discovered 4 times by Trollope and Baker and Dench, although, as we now know, Dench didn't exactly get Bristol Royal, and Craven. But York Bramble didn't think that this was the right extension of Bristol. And what he didn't like about it was that it had the wrong place bell order. Now, this is something I've glossed over up to now, but if we look at the place bell orders, in major we've got 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 6, 4, the reverse of plain bob. And one thing we find a little bit perturbing when we learn Bristol Royal is that the place bell order is now the same as plain bob. And that seems a little bit strange. And when we learn Bristol Maximus, it gets even worse because the place bell order of Maximus is like nothing we've ever seen before. Now, it is possible to make sense of this if you use the system where plain bob place bell order is called +1, and then any other place bell order is represented by how many leads of plain bob the lead of the method is equivalent to, then Bristol Major has place bell order -1 because it's the reverse of plain bob, Bristol Royal is +1 because it's the same as plain bob, and Bristol Maximus is +3. And now you can say that because place bell orders are a cyclical thing, in major, if you ring 7 leads of plain bob, you get back where you started because it's a whole course. So in major, 7 equals 0 in the system. In Royal, 9 equals 0, and in Maximus, 11 equals 0. And if you look at things that way, then the place bell order of Bristol on all numbers is actually -8. And then the same thing continues to 14 and 16 and as far as you want. Now, you might think this is irrefutable logic, or you might think it's irrelevant sophistry, but in any case, the current definitions of method extension rules don't say anything about the place bell order at all. Nevertheless, Albert York Bramble wanted 10 and 12 bell methods with the same -1 place bell order. And in his letter, he promised to set out a theory of method extension which would culminate in the correct versions of Bristol Royal and Maximus. And during the rest of 1922, he published a series of 4 articles about his theory of method extension. And I must confess, I skipped to the end to find out what the methods actually were. And he did produce them in the very last Ringing World of 1922. And this is his Royal method. It starts off rather like shipshape. He's got the Bristol work pushed up to the back 4 places. He's got some free spikes in 5, 6. And then he's got some other filling in work. And this is what the line looks like. Doesn't look too bad. This method has not been rung and named, but maybe it would be interesting to do so. This is his 12 bell method. And this doesn't look so good at all. I mean, what are these knights and tenth place bells doing here? This should be two bells doing a point and swapping with each other. The way he's got it, you get non-coursing pairs together at the back. Doesn't really satisfy modern tastes. So Albert York Bramble's Maximus method has also not been named and probably never will be. Ebanks James, later in 1922, proposed a Maximus version of Bristol of his own. And this is his method. You see it starts off with all the Bristol points. Then you've got some more points further up. You've got some fishtails and some more fishtails. This all looks much more sensible. Here's how the line comes out. This method has not been named either, but maybe it would be interesting for someone to do so. Now, I said that the Bristol Major just doesn't extend well to Royal, and that's why you end up introducing the wrong dodges that just appear from nowhere. But is it really true that there are no extensions of Bristol Major according to the current rules? Well, you can look Bristol Major up in the composition library, complib.org, and it will tell you which methods are extensions of it. And what you see is one Royal method that is an extension of Bristol Major, and it's this one. It looks rather like chip shape in a way, although this work in 5/6 is actually a triple dodge rather than a 3 spike, so it's slightly longer. But this method has a short course. The plain course is only 3 leads long. And methods with short courses historically have not found favour. They've been rehabilitated a bit in recent years, and sometimes they're used in compositions of spliced to get particular effects. But usually when we're extending methods, what we want is something with a full-length plain course. There is one Maximus method, which is a direct extension of Bristol Major, and that is Smallbrook. So here it is with Bristol next to it for comparison. So we've got the Bristol points at the beginning, and then we've got some more points and some more points before eventually getting into a fishtail at the back. And there are fishtails inside the method as well in 5/6 and 7/8. This is what the line looks like. Smallbrook is a reasonably standard Maximus method and has been run a fair bit, including in years of spliced. So that's what I know about Bristol. We can thank Ebanks James and the Brighton Band for giving us Bristol Major. We can thank the Beddington Band for perhaps ignoring all the controversy about what the real Bristol Royal should be and just going ahead with the version that we now consider standard. I should have been doing something like this today to commemorate the Bristol Major anniversary, especially as 5/120 is such an easy length to get, but unfortunately we can't get together to ring at the moment, and instead I've commemorated the anniversary by making this video, which I hope you found interesting. And that's all.